want a roof over your head. Kid, here's my offer. Play something worth listening to at my winter charity gala this Saturday night. If you can actually play something that doesn't make my ears bleed, I'll write a check for your adoption. But when you embarrass yourself, and trust me, you will, I never want to see your dirty little face in my neighborhood again. What happens when a heartless billionaire's cruel challenge becomes the stage for the most extraordinary revelation of her life when 11-year-old Ethan Rivera, a homeless boy with nothing but a broken keyboard and a dream, accepts a challenge designed to humiliate him? Nobody expects what comes next. This is the story of how one song, just one haunting melody, can shatter every prejudice, every assumption, and every cold heart in a room full of Boston's elite. Dear viewer, I humbly request you to watch or listen till the end and rate this story out of 10. Your rating will help me deliver better stories in future videos. If this is your first time watching my stories, please subscribe to this channel and press the bell icon now so you don't miss notifications of my daily new stories. Thank you. And let's dive into the full story. Boston's December wind cut through downtown like a knife. But Ethan Rivera barely noticed anymore. His 11-year-old fingers, stiff from the cold, danced across the keys of his battered Casio keyboard, coaxing out melodies that seemed too beautiful for such worn equipment. The corner of Faneuil Hall Marketplace had become his stage, a piece of cardboard beneath him. His only barrier against the frozen concrete, Moonlight Sonata. He played, but not as Beethoven had written it. Ethan's left hand held the classical bass line steady while his right hand soared with jazz improvisations that made passers-by stop in their tracks. Holiday shoppers hurried past. Some dropped coins into his open keyboard case. Most pretended not to see the Latino boy in the oversized coat that had seen too many winters. Ethan had been playing for 3 hours, earning exactly $12.50, enough for a hot meal if he was careful. His stomach growled, but he kept playing. Music was the only thing that still made sense. The only connection to the life he'd had before everything fell apart. In his mind, the piano merged with his mother's voice. Music is the language of the soul. Mijo, when you play, you speak truth. 18 months. It had been 18 months since his mother, Rosa Rivera, died from the cancer they couldn't afford to treat. 18 months since Ethan's world had shrunk to this keyboard, these street corners, and Hope Haven shelter where he slept on a cot among 80 others in a space meant for 50. The gleaming glass doors of Sterling Tower burst open, and Victoria Sterling herself emerged, flanked by her assistant Rachel Chen and 2 imposing bodyguards. At 52, Victoria Sterling commanded attention effortlessly, platinum blonde hair styled to perfection, a white Armani suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, and an expression of perpetual disdain that had become her trademark in Boston's business circles, as one of the city's rare self-made female billionaires. She'd built Sterling real estate empire from nothing into one of New England's most powerful companies. Ms. Sterling, the car is waiting, Rachel said softly. But Victoria had stopped, her attention caught by the melody floating through the air. Ethan didn't notice the group at first, lost in his music. His eyes were closed, his body swaying slightly as he played the complex arrangement he'd taught himself by ear. The sound of Moonlight Sonata transformed, becoming more powerful, jazz phrases weaving in like moonlight through clouds. Victoria stood frozen. The melody had awakened something deep within her. She remembered a small room in Roxbury, an out-of-tune piano, a girl named Vicky Gonzalez dreaming that music could save her. She shook her head sharply, banishing the memory. Well, Victoria's voice boomed, causing Ethan to jump and hit a wrong note. What do we have here? Another street performer polluting the air with noise. Ethan's eyes snapped open, meeting the cold gaze of the billionaire. He'd seen Victoria Sterling's face on magazines in the library where he sometimes went to stay warm. The woman who owned half of downtown Boston, who'd built her fortune in real estate and tech investments. I'm just playing music. Ma'am, Ethan said quietly, his hands still resting on the keys. Victoria laughed, a harsh sound that drew the attention of pedestrians. Several stopped to watch. Sensing drama unfolding, a few people pulled out phones to record. Music. You call that music? That's just noise pollution. Boy, real music requires training, education, culture, things clearly beyond your circumstances. The small crowd grew larger. Someone raised their phone to film. Rachel Chen touched Victoria's arm gently. Ma'am, we should go? The merger meeting. Tell me. Boy, Victoria interrupted, stepping closer to Ethan. How much do you make doing this? $20 a day. 30 on a good day? Sometimes, Ethan answered honestly, his chin lifting slightly. It's enough. Enough. Victoria pulled out her wallet, extracting a crisp $500 bill. She held it up, making sure the growing crowd could see. You want this. You want real money. Ethan's eyes widened despite himself. $500 meant food for a week. Maybe even new gloves so his fingers wouldn't go numb while playing. Here's my offer, Victoria announced loudly, playing to her audience. There's a winter charity gala at my ballroom this Saturday night. 400 of Boston's finest will be there. She paused for effect, her smile turning cruel. You show up. Play something actually worth listening to, not this street garbage. And if you can impress even one person, I'll personally fund your adoption and education. Everything. The crowd gasped. Rachel's eyes widened in shock. Miss Sterling, but... Victoria continued, her smile turning vicious. When you fail, and you will fail, because what could a street kid possibly know about real music, you never show your face near my building again. Ever. You take your noise pollution somewhere else. Ethan stared at the $500 bill still in Victoria's hand. The crowd was silent, waiting. He could feel their mixture of pity and curiosity. Some hoping he'd accept, others hoping he'd tell the rich woman off. A black man in the crowd spoke up, Lady. That's a child. You can't. I'm offering opportunity. Victoria turned to him. This isn't charity, it's meritocracy. If the boy has talent, he'll prove it. If not, he learns a valuable lesson about reality. Keep your 500, Ethan said quietly, his voice steady despite his racing heart. I'll take your challenge. Victoria laughed again, still tossing the bill into Ethan's case anyway. Saturday, 7 p.m. sharp. The doorman will have your name, though I doubt you'll actually show up. Your kind rarely follows through on anything. Miss Sterling, Rachel protested, but she was already walking toward her waiting Bentley. 1 week? Boy, Victoria called over her shoulder, come prepared to embarrass yourself. or don't come at all. As the Bentley pulled away, Ethan sat frozen on his cardboard mat. The crowd slowly dispersed, some dropping money into his case out of sympathy, others shaking their heads at what they had witnessed. An elderly Latina woman stopped, pressing a $5 bill into his hand. "Don't let her break you." "Cariño," she whispered. "People like her, they think they own the world." Ethan nodded, unable to speak. He looked down at the $500 bill in his case, Benjamin Franklin's face staring up at him like a challenge of its own. 1 week, 1 chance, 1 song that could change everything or destroy the only corner in the city where he felt safe. As the wind picked up again, Ethan carefully packed his keyboard into its duct-taped case. His fingers found the photo tucked inside his mother Rosa, smiling, sitting at the old upright piano in their apartment before illness took everything. "Real music requires culture," Victoria had said. If only she knew. Ethan stood, just slinging the keyboard case over his shoulder. 1 week to prove that music wasn't about money or breeding or the color of your skin. It was about soul, about stories that needed to be told, about the human heart speaking when words weren't enough. The question was, would anyone really listen? Hope Haven Shelter sat in Boston's South End, a 3-story red brick building that had seen better winters. When Ethan walked in at 6 p.m., the space was already bursting with noise children running around, adults lining up for dinner, the smell of soup and bread heavy in the air. "Ethan, there you are." Sister Maria Santos's warm voice cut through the chaos. The 45-year-old woman, with her graying black hair and gentle brown eyes, had been looking after Ethan since the 10-year-old boy first showed up at Hope Haven 2 years ago, clutching his mother's keyboard like a lifeline. "Hey, Sister Maria." Ethan tried to smile, but she knew him too well. "What's wrong? Mijo, you look like you've seen a ghost." She guided him to a quieter corner, past the long tables where dozens of men, women, and children were eating their evening meal soup and sandwiches tonight. Same as every Tuesday. Ethan set down his keyboard case carefully and told her everything. As he spoke, Sister Maria's expression shifted from concern to anger to deep worry. Around them, the shelter bustled with its usual evening activity. 3 other kids Ethan knew from the youth section, Maya, Carlos, and Lily, were doing homework at a nearby table. Volunteers helping them with math problems, Victoria Sterling. Sister Maria said the name like it tasted bad. "Her foundation funds us, but I've heard stories. She likes her tax write-offs and her PR photos, but actually caring about people, that's not in her vocabulary." "But what if she's serious?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if this is my chance to get out of here?" Sister Maria took his hands in hers, noticing how cold they were despite the shelter's heating. "Mijo, I know how hard this life is. I see you out there every day, playing your heart out for spare change. But people like Sterling, they don't make offers like this to help. They do it for entertainment, to make themselves feel superior." "Then I'll surprise her," Ethan said with sudden determination. "I'll play something that'll make her eat her words." One of the shelter staff members, Carl, a tall black man who worked security, overheard and shook his head. "Kid, I worked security for one of Sterling's events once. She treated us like we were invisible, except when she wanted to complain about something. You sure you want to put yourself through that? What choice do I have?" Ethan's voice cracked slightly, showing his age. You know what tomorrow is? Sister Maria's face softened. She knew. November 15th, 2 years since Ethan's mother had died, leaving him completely alone. No father in the picture. No relatives who could or would take him in. Mom was a music teacher. Ethan continued, his eyes distant. At Lincoln Elementary, piano, voice, even some violin. She taught me everything. Said music was in our blood, going back generations. My great-grandfather played jazz at the Cotton Club. Did you know that you never told me that? Sister Maria said softly. Mom didn't like to talk about the past much. Said we needed to focus on moving forward, but she made sure I knew about the music. Made sure I could read it, write it, feel it. He touched his keyboard case gently. This was hers. It's all I have left. Maya, a 9-year-old girl with bright eyes despite her circumstances, had wandered over. You gonna play for rich folks? Ethan, maybe. Ethan replied. Play that song you wrote, she said eagerly. The one about the trains. That one always makes me cry. You wrote a song, Sister Maria asked. Surprised? Ethan shrugged. Embarrassed? A few. Mom taught me composition. Said anyone could play other people's music. But creating your own, that's how you talk to God. The shelter's dinner hour was winding down. Volunteers were starting to clear tables, and people were settling in for the night. Hope Haven had beds for 50, but on cold nights like this, they'd squeeze in 80 or more. Ethan had a cot in the youth section, a small area separated by curtains, where they tried to keep the kids somewhat sheltered from the harsher realities of adult homelessness. Ethan, Sister Maria said carefully, if you're serious about this, you need to prepare properly. A charity gala isn't a street corner. These people, they expect certain things. Classical pieces, probably Mozart, Beethoven, that kind of thing. I know classical, Ethan said quietly. Mom made sure that, but that's not what I want to play. Carl laughed, not unkindly. Kid's got guts. I'll give him that. You really think you can make Victoria Sterling listen to something you wrote? I have to try, Ethan said. What's the worst that can happen? I'm already sleeping in a shelter, eating donated food, wearing donated clothes. She said I can never play near her building again. Fine. Boston's a big city. But even as he said it, Ethan knew it wasn't that simple. That corner had become his spot, the one place where he felt connected to something larger. The acoustics were perfect, the foot traffic steady, and sometimes, just sometimes, people actually stopped and listened, really listened to what he was playing. Carlos. 13 tugged on Ethan's sleeve. You gonna be on TV? Don't know, Ethan admitted. If you get adopted, will you still come see us? Maya asked. And there was real fear in her voice. Ethan was one of the older kids who looked out for the younger ones, made sure they got their fair share at meals, helped them with homework when he could. I'm not going anywhere, Ethan promised. But the words felt hollow. Wasn't that exactly what he was hoping for? To go somewhere, anywhere but here. The lights flickered the shelter's signal that it was time to prepare for lights out. Ethan gathered his things, heading for the youth section. As he passed the small office where Sister Maria did her paperwork, she called out to him. Ethan, wait. She pulled something from her desk, a folder thick with papers. If you're really doing this, you should know something. I've been trying to track down your father. Ethan froze. What your mother listed a name, On your birth certificate. Gabriel Cruz. I've been searching for 2 years, and I think I might have found him. He owns a music store in the North End. The world seemed to tilt. My father is alive, and he's here in Boston. I'm not certain it's him. But Ethan, if it is, maybe you should talk to him before you pin your hopes on Victoria Sterling's cruel game. Ethan took the folder with trembling hands. Inside was an address, a photo of a storefront Cruz piano restoration and more, and a grainy picture of a brown-skinned man, maybe 40, standing behind a counter full of instruments. Why didn't she ever tell me? Ethan whispered. I don't know. Mijo. Sister Maria squeezed his shoulder. Sometimes adults make complicated choices. But Ethan, promise me something. Whatever happens Saturday, don't let that woman break your spirit. Your music is a gift. Don't let anyone, no matter how rich or powerful, tell you otherwise. Wednesday morning, Ethan stood outside Cruz Piano Restoration and More for 20 minutes. The folder Sister Maria had given him clutched in his sweaty hands. His keyboard case felt heavier than usual on his shoulder. The shop sat wedged between a dry cleaner and a Dominican restaurant on North Halsted Street. The windows were dusty, but filled with gleaming instruments. Through the glass, he could see the man from the photograph. Older now, his hair completely gray, wearing a worn cardigan over a jazz festival t-shirt. He was tuning a guitar, his fingers moving with practiced ease. Ethan's heart hammered. Could this really be his father? And if it was, why had he never come looking? The bell above the door chimed as Ethan finally entered. The store smelled of wood polish and old paper. Sheet music was stacked everywhere, and instruments hung from every available surface. A Louis Armstrong poster watched from the wall next to signed photos of musicians Ethan didn't recognize. Help you. Young man Gabriel Cruz looked up, his fingers still on the guitar strings. His eyes were kind but tired, the eyes of someone who'd seen too much. Ethan's voice failed him. He cleared his throat. I need to practice for a performance. I can pay. He pulled out the crumpled $500 bill. Gabriel's eyebrows rose. That's a lot of money for a kid your age to be carrying around. You in some kind of trouble? No, sir. I earned it. Well, kind of. The story tumbled out before Ethan could stop himself. Victoria Sterling. The challenge. The gala. As he spoke, he watched Gabriel's face carefully, looking for any sign of recognition. Did he see his own features reflected there, the same nose? Maybe the same way of tilting his head when listening Sterling? Gabriel said slowly, setting down the guitar. That woman came in here once, 5 years ago. Wanted to buy my entire vintage collection for her office, like they were decorations instead of instruments with souls. I refused. She tried to buy the building to force me out. A small smile played at his lips. Lucky for me. The owner's my friend told Sterling where she could stick her offer, despite his nerves. Ethan smiled too. Then, he's gathering courage. He said, I'm Ethan Rivera. My mother was Rosa Rivera. The change in Gabriel was instant. All the color drained from his face. The guitar pick fell from his fingers, clattering on the wooden floor. Rosa, he whispered. Then louder. You're Rosa's boy. You knew her. Gabriel moved around the counter slowly like he was in a dream, up close. Ethan could see it clearly. They had the same eyes, the same long fingers made for piano keys. I knew her, Gabriel said quietly. Lord help me. I knew her. And I'm your father, Gabriel finished. Aren't I a customer chose that moment to enter a teenage girl with her mother, looking at violins? Gabriel quickly wiped his eyes. Give me a moment, he told them, his voice unsteady. Then to Ethan, come to the back. We need to talk. The back room was a workshop full of instruments in various states of repair. Gabriel sat heavily on a stool, gesturing for Ethan to do the same. I met your mother at a jazz club in 2010, Gabriel began, his voice thick with regret. She was playing piano at the regatta bar, and I swear I'd never heard anything like it. We were together for 2 years. Happy years. Then what Ethan felt something hard form in his chest. I wasn't ready to be a father, Gabriel admitted, shame heavy in his voice. I was drinking too much, running with the wrong crowd. Your mother, she was going places, had a teaching job lined up, a future. I was just a jazz musician with more dreams than sense. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I left. You just left. Worst mistake of my life. I got clean a year later. Came back to find her. But Rosa had moved, changed her number. I hired people to look for you both, but Rosa had covered her tracks well. I've been searching ever since. Gabriel's shoulders shook. She died, Ethan said flatly. 2 years ago. Cancer. Gabriel broke down crying. I know, I found the obituary 6 months ago. By then, you'd disappeared into the system. I've been trying to find you. But the foster system, the shelters, they don't give out information easily. I've been looking. I've been at Hope Haven, Ethan said. Playing music on the streets, surviving. Oh, God. Gabriel buried his face in his hands. Your mother must have hated me. Ethan thought about it. She never mentioned you. Not once. But she made sure I knew about music. Said it was in my blood. Can you play instead of answering? Ethan opened his battered keyboard case. He set it up on Gabriel's workbench and began to play one of his mother's favorite pieces, a Debussy prelude she'd taught him when he was 7. His fingers flew across the keys. The small keyboard, somehow producing sounds that seemed too big for its speakers. Gabriel watched, transfixed. When Ethan finished, there were tears streaming down the older man's face. You play like her, but there's something else there too. Something that's all you. I write my own pieces, Ethan admitted. Show me. Ethan played a composition he'd been working on. A piece about the city at night, about loneliness and hope existing in the same space. It was complex, with jazz influences mixed with classical structure, something entirely his own. That's extraordinary. Gabriel breathed. You wrote that. Ethan nodded. I want to play it at the gala. Not what Sterling expects. But this. My truth. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. Then, that piano in the corner. It's a Bosendorfer Imperial Grand, over 9 feet of perfection. I've been restoring it for 3 years. If you're going to play for those people, you need to practice on something real. Not that keyboard I can't afford. You're my son. Gabriel interrupted. You never have to pay for anything in this store. Ever. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. The customer at the front called out, asking for help. Damn, Gabriel muttered. Look, can you come back tonight after I close? We'll work on your piece. Make sure it's ready. And Ethan, he stumbled over the word, still not used to it. After this gala, whatever happens, We need to talk about your future. You shouldn't be on the streets. You have family now. Family. The word felt foreign in Ethan's mouth. Why should I trust you? You left once. Because I've spent 12 years regretting it, Gabriel said simply. Because your mother never let me make it right. And maybe she had good reason. But you're here now, and I'm here. And maybe that's God giving me a second chance I don't deserve. That evening, Ethan returned. The store was closed. But Gabriel was waiting. They worked for hours. Gabriel teaching Ethan techniques his mother hadn't, showing him how to pull emotion from keys in ways that could make grown men weep. An off-duty security guard, Mike, stopped by Gabriel's friend who sometimes watched the store. He listened to Ethan play, shaking his head in wonder. Kid's got it, Mike said. Whatever it is, he's got it in spades. He's playing for Victoria Sterling's Winter Charity Gala, Gabriel explained. Mike whistled low. That racist woman? Good luck. Kid, she wouldn't recognize real talent if it bit her. Maybe, Ethan said, his fingers never stopping their practice. Or maybe she just hasn't heard the right song yet. As the night wore on, Gabriel taught Ethan about performance, about commanding a room, about making every note count. Your mother, he said at one point. She could make a room full of people hold their breath. You have that same power. Don't let anyone tell you different. When Ethan finally left, it was past midnight. Gabriel walked him to the door, then did something unexpected. He hugged him, quick, awkward, but genuine. Saturday, Gabriel said. I'll be there in the audience. You won't be alone. Ethan nodded, unable to speak, past the lump in his throat. As he walked back to the shelter, his keyboard case felt lighter somehow. He had a father, a complicated, flawed, guilt-ridden father, but a father nonetheless. And in 2 days, he'd show Victoria Sterling and all her rich friends what real music sounded like. The kind that came from pain and joy, loss and discovery. The kind that told the truth even when the truth was hard. The question was, would they be able to hear it? Or were their hearts too closed? Their prejudices too strong, Saturday would tell. Wednesday, Sterling Tower, 45th floor. Victoria Sterling's office sprawled across the entire floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston like the city was hers. The mahogany desk cost more than most people's apartments. On the walls hung awards, photos with presidents, governors, CEOs, all proof of the power Victoria had built. But today, she wasn't sitting behind her desk. She stood at the windows, an expensive scotch in hand despite it being barely 10 a.m., looking down at the ant-like humans below. The board has arrived. Ms. Sterling, Rachel Chen announced from the doorway, her voice more careful and cautious than usual. 4 board members filed in. Judge Patricia Howard, a 58-year-old black woman with an air of dignity, despite the hostile environment, who'd fought every step to her federal judgeship. Jonathan Hartley, a 50-year-old CEO with perfect silver hair and a smug smile, who'd inherited his father's company and believed it was due to his own merit. Sandra Kellerman, a 45-year-old real estate heiress dressed in Chanel and wearing diamonds worth enough to feed a family for a year. And finally, Marcus Blackwood, a 60-year-old black attorney who'd overcome every barrier to succeed but still remembered where he came from. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria began, pouring herself scotch despite the hour. Saturday's gala will be memorable for more reasons than just our charitable contributions. About that, Judge Howard said carefully. I heard a disturbing story about you propositioning a homeless child offering opportunity, Victoria corrected smoothly. The boy claims to be a musician. I'm giving him a platform. When he fails, and he will, perhaps it will motivate him to pursue more realistic ambitions. Education. Perhaps a trade? You mean you're setting him up for humiliation? Blackwood said flatly. Sandra laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on everyone's nerves. Oh, Marcus, don't be so dramatic. It's character building. Besides, imagine the press. Sterling gives homeless child chance of a lifetime. We'll spin it positively, regardless of outcome. I've invited Channel 7 Boston Herald and the Tribune. Victoria confirmed. They'll want to document my generosity. Rachel Chen couldn't stay silent. Ma'am, what if he's actually good? The room went quiet. Victoria turned slowly to face her assistant. Good, a street child. Rachel, I've heard him play. It's noise. Untrained, undisciplined noise. The kind of thing bleeding hearts mistake for talent. Still, Jonathan Hartley interjected, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. Shouldn't we have a contingency if by some miracle there will be no miracle? Victoria cut him off. I've seen his type before. They learn a few chords, play by ear, think that makes them musicians. Real music, classical music, requires breeding, education, culture, accumulated over generations. You can't just pick that up on the street. Jennifer Walsh, a 35-year-old CEO being groomed as Victoria's successor, was scrolling through her phone. There's already buzz online. Someone posted a video of your interaction with the boy. The comments are mixed. Let them comment. Victoria shrugged. After tomorrow. They'll see I was right. The boy will be exposed as a pretender, and perhaps some bleeding heart family will take pity and adopt him. Either way, I win. And if he doesn't show Blackwood asked, then I win even faster. We'll tell everyone I tried to help. But those people can't even follow through on opportunities handed to them on a silver platter. Those people, Blackwood's voice was dangerously quiet. Victoria didn't even blink. The poor. Marcus, I meant the poor. Don't make everything about race. The two lawyers Victoria kept on retainer chose that moment to enter. Ms. Sterling, we need to discuss liability issues. If the child performs poorly and suffers emotional distress, he's a street child. Victoria interrupted. What's he going to do, sue me, with what money? Besides, I have witnesses. He accepted the challenge willingly. Actually, one lawyer said nervously, he's represented by someone named Sister Maria Santos from Hope Haven Shelter. She called. Asking for written terms of your offer. Victoria laughed. A social worker? How terrifying. Tell her the terms are simple. The boy plays, he impresses my guests, I adopt him, he fails, he stays away from my property. End of story. Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her eyes widening. Ma'am, there's something you should see. She projected her screen onto the large display in the conference room. A social media post from someone named Gabriel Cruz. I'll be attending the Winter Charity Gala Saturday as a guest of the Murphy family. I wouldn't miss my son's performance for anything in the world. Ethan Rivera. Your father is proud of you. Let Ethan play. Victoria's glass stopped halfway to her lips. Cruz. Gabriel Cruz. The music store owner who refused to sell to me? The same, Rachel confirmed. And he's claiming to be the boy's father. For the first time. Uncertainty flickered across Victoria's face. Then it hardened into something crueler. Perfect. He can watch his son fail in person, make sure security knows. He's only allowed in the main ballroom, nowhere else. This is getting out of hand. Judge Blackwood stood. Victoria, I've watched you do questionable things for profit. But this is just cruelty. This is reality. Victoria shot back. That boy needs to learn his place in the world. Better he learns it now when he's young enough to adjust his expectations. His place. Blackwood's voice rose. And where exactly is that? Not in my ballroom playing for people who've earned their positions through generations of hard work and refinement. I grew up 10 blocks from where that boy probably sleeps. Blackwood said quietly. Are you saying I don't belong in your ballroom either? You're different, Victoria said dismissively. You pulled yourself up, you educated yourself, you became one of us. One of you, Blackwood corrected. I never became one of you. Victoria, I just learned to speak your language. There's a difference. He left without another word. The others shifted uncomfortably. Should we be concerned about his reaction? Jennifer asked. Marcus Blackwood knows which side his bread is buttered on, Victoria said confidently. He'll be there Saturday, smiling for the cameras like always. They all will. Because at the end of the day, money talks louder than conscience. Sandra stood, smoothing her designer dress. Well, I for one am looking forward to tomorrow. It's been ages since we've had any real drama at these things. Usually it's just the same boring speeches about tax-deductible generosity. Harrison, make sure the piano is perfectly tuned, Victoria ordered. I want no excuses when the boy fails. Jennifer, coordinate with the media. I want this framed correctly. Benevolent businesswoman gives unfortunate child a chance. And if the narrative shifts, Jennifer asked, and won't. I control the narrative, I always have. As the board members filed out, Victoria remained behind. Rachel gathered her papers but lingered. Ms. Sterling, may I speak freely? You may not, but I sense you're going to anyway. This feels wrong. That boy. He's just a child. Whatever point you're trying to make. The point? Rachel. Is that society has forgotten natural order? We pretend everyone is equal, that talent is distributed randomly across economic lines. It's not. Excellence breeds excellence. Poverty breeds poverty. That boy needs to understand his limitations. What if you're wrong? Victoria turned back to her window, looking down at the city below. I'm never wrong about people like him. Outside Sterling Tower. The world was boiling over. The video of Victoria's confrontation with Ethan had hit 2 million views. The hashtag Sterling Challenge was trending nationally. Comments split into 2 deep camps. That woman is horrible. He's just a child. She's teaching him about reality. Not everyone deserves success. This is blatant racism. The boy is Latino. She's demeaning him publicly. Oh, sorry, everything's about race. Maybe he actually doesn't have talent. Victoria Sterling is an inspiration self-made from nothing. Now giving others a chance. I've served at her events. She treats us like trash. This isn't about helping anyone. News media had jumped in Boston Herald Sterling's Cruel Challenge charity or Cruelty Fox News. Conservative self-made billionaire offers. Homeless youth opportunity. MSNBC progressive billionaire humiliates. Homeless child for entertainment. NPR questions about motive as music experts weigh in on Sterling Challenge. The pressure on Ethan mounted. TV crews descended on Hope Haven Shelter. Sister Maria had to protect the children, setting up barriers between the cameras and the vulnerable kids. A reporter called over the fence, "Ethan, are you scared? Do you think you can win?" Ethan, face hidden in his hoodie, just shook his head and hurried inside. Carlos, his 13-year-old friend, put a hand on his shoulder once they were safely inside. "Bro, this is crazy. You're everywhere." "I just wanted to play music," Ethan whispered. Sister Maria locked the door behind them. "Mijo, I'm worried about you. Victoria Sterling is turning this into a reality show. Cameras will be everywhere." "Then I'll give them a show," Ethan said, but his voice trembled. Maya, the 9-year-old girl, clutched her rag doll. "Ethan, if you win, will you be famous like on TV? Don't know. Maya, I hope you win." "Lily," the 7-year-old girl who rarely spoke, whispered. It was one of the few words she'd said in months. Thursday evening. Gabriel's shop. Ethan practiced intensely, sweat dripping onto the ivory. "You're ready," Gabriel said. "More than ready. What if I freeze? What if she's right?" Gabriel sat down next to his son on the piano bench. "Let me tell you a story. I used to be a jazz pianist. Played at Wally's, Sculler's, all the Boston clubs. So why did you stop?" "Then I met your mother. She was singing at the Regatta Bar. Voice like an angel." Gabriel's eyes grew distant. "We fell in love. Then I got scared, started drinking, left. I know that part, but there's something you don't know." Gabriel stood, walked to an old filing cabinet. He pulled out a faded photograph, preserved in plastic. "Here." Ethan looked at the photo. 2 children, about 10 years old, standing outside a rundown apartment building in Roxbury. A boy, clearly a younger Gabriel, and a girl with brown skin, wearing clothes from the Salvation Army, but smiling radiantly. "Who's this?" Ethan asked. Though something about the girl's eyes. "Vicky Gonzalez?" Gabriel said softly. "That's Victoria Sterling's real name." Ethan nearly dropped the photo. "What, we grew up in the same neighborhood? Roxbury. We were both poor. Her parents were immigrants from Mexico. Her mother cleaned houses. Her father drank, beat her. But," she said. Ethan couldn't process it. "She changed everything." Gabriel continued her name, used skin lightening treatments, spoke her accent away until there wasn't a trace of Spanish left, erased every connection to her past. She's Latina. Like us." "That's right, but she hates it, hates where she came from, thinks denying her roots made her successful." Ethan stared at the photo. The child in it looked happy, full of hope. The woman Victoria Sterling had become. There was none of that in those eyes. Why would she do that? Because she thought she had to. Because the world told her that to succeed, she had to become someone else. And she believed it. Gabriel placed his hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You see now, she's not challenging you because of who you are. She's challenging you because you remind her of who she used to be. You're a mirror reflecting the past she tried to destroy. So, what do? You play your truth. You show her that you don't have to be ashamed of your roots, that your music is beautiful because it honors where you come from, not in spite of it." Ethan looked down at his hands. These hands, his grandfather's hands, who played jazz at the Cotton Club, his mother's hands, who taught piano even while dying from cancer, his father's hands, who finally came back. "I'm not playing to change her mind," Ethan realized. "I'm playing to show her she can be both. Victoria Sterling and Vicky Gonzalez. Exactly." Gabriel smiled, tears in his eyes. Your mother taught you well." "So did you," Ethan said. And for the first time, the word "you" as father didn't feel strange. They practiced until midnight. But now the music had new meaning. It wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about every child told they had to give up themselves to succeed. About every immigrant told they had to erase their past to have a future. About redemption for both the player and the listener. When Ethan finally packed up his keyboard, he wouldn't need it tomorrow. He'd be playing a real Steinway. Gabriel gripped his shoulder. "Tomorrow you change everything. Not just for you, for all of us." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of it. One more day, one chance, one song that could break the walls Victoria Sterling had built around her heart. The question was, would she let it in? Friday, the day before the performance. Boston's winter sunlight streamed through the dusty windows of Gabriel's shop, creating streaks of light across the Bösendorfer Imperial Grand. Ethan sat at the piano from 6 a.m., his fingers moving through his piece again. Race's Roots, the name he'd given it after learning the truth about Victoria. "Play it again," Gabriel said softly from the corner of the workshop, where he was making coffee. "But this time, remember you're not just playing notes, you're telling our story." Ethan nodded, placed his hands on the keys. This time, when he played, everything was different. The opening, the Mexican folk melody La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, but filtered through the lens of Debussy. It began simple, pure. A child learning the language of the soul from his mother. Then complexity crept in. Left hand jazz bass lines like Bill Evans, right hand classical structure like Bach. But together, they created something that wasn't classical or jazz, wasn't Mexican or American, but all of it at once. The heart of the piece told of lost mother dying, father gone, the loneliness of nights in shelters. But it didn't wallow in pain. It transformed it, like jazz had done with blues, like every generation of immigrants had done with their suffering, turned it into art. The coda, the ending, returned to the simple opening melody, but now enriched by everything that had come before. Like a child coming home. Changed, but still himself. When the last note faded, there was applause from the doorway. Sister Maria had arrived, bringing Maya, Carlos, and Lily behind them, Mike the security guard, and two of Gabriel's regular customers who'd stopped when they heard the music. "Mijo," Sister Maria said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't have words. Maya ran up, hugging Ethan. "That's the most beautiful song I've ever heard." Carlos, usually trying to stay cool, wiped his eyes. "Bro, you're going to destroy them." Lily, the 7-year-old who rarely spoke, tugged on Ethan's sleeve when he bent down. She whispered in his ear, "My mom used to play piano before she left me." Ethan's heart clenched. He knelt to her eye level. "Then you have music in your blood too, just like me. Maybe someday you'll play for me." Lily nodded, a small smile appearing. Sister Maria pulled Ethan aside. "You need to hear this. I got a call this morning from Rachel Chen, Sterling's assistant. She called, not officially, she called because she feels guilty. Victoria has hired a piano prodigy, Christopher Ashford, 14 years old, white, from a wealthy family to play after you, to prove the difference between real talent and what you have." Ethan's stomach dropped. Gabriel, having heard, gripped his hand. "It's a trap. She's rigging the deck from the start. But that's not all. Sister Maria continued. Rachel says she's been fired or quit. It's unclear, but she's still coming. She says Judge Patricia Howard has also arranged something. 3 professional musicians will be there. Friends of hers. They'll listen with educated ears, not prejudiced ones. Mike, the security guard, stepped into the conversation. I used to work for Sterling. She doesn't play fair, ever. But kid, you've got something she doesn't. What truth? Mike tapped his chest. Your music comes from here. Hers, it comes from ego. As evening fell, the group sat together in Gabriel's shop. The children from the shelter. Sister Maria. Gabriel. Mike. Everyone who believed in Ethan gathered around the restored Bosendorfer. One more time, Ethan said. I need to play it one more time. This time when he played, it was different. Fuller. He wasn't just playing his story anymore. He was playing for every kid at the shelter, for Gabriel's lost years, for Sister Maria's tireless fight, for Judge Blackwood's lonely climb, for Victoria's buried self. The music held all of it, transformed it into something beautiful and terrible and absolutely true. When the last note faded, there were tears on every face in the room. They're not ready for you, Gabriel said quietly. They think they know what poverty sounds like, what struggle looks like. They have no idea what's coming. As they prepared to leave, Ethan carefully closed the Steinway's lid, running his hand along its surface. Tomorrow, he'd be playing a different piano in a different world, but the music would be the same. His truth, his mother's legacy, his father's redemption, all woven into notes that would either change everything or change nothing. Through the store window, Boston's skyline glittered. Sterling Tower standing tallest of all, a monument to one woman's power. But tomorrow, for 10 minutes, maybe less, an 11-year-old boy with nothing but talent and courage would hold that power in his hands. The question was, what would he do with it? And would Victoria Sterling Vicky Gonzalez be brave enough to face the girl she'd buried? Friday, the day before the performance. Boston's winter sunlight streamed through the dusty windows of Gabriel's shop, creating streaks of light across the Bosendorfer Imperial Grand. Ethan sat at the piano from 6 a.m., his fingers moving through his piece again. Race's Roots, the name he'd given it after learning the truth about Victoria. Play it again? Gabriel said softly from the corner of the workshop, where he was making coffee. But this time, remember, you're not just playing notes. You're telling our story. Ethan nodded, placed his hands on the keys. This time, when he played, everything was different. The opening, the Mexican folk melody La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, but filtered through the lens of Debussy. It began simple, pure. A child learning the language of the soul from his mother. Then complexity crept in. Left hand jazz bass lines like Bill Evans. Right hand classical structure like Bach. But together, they created something that wasn't classical or jazz, wasn't Mexican or American, but all of it at once. The heart of the piece told of lost mother dying, father gone, the loneliness of nights in shelters. But it didn't wallow in pain, it transformed it, like jazz had done with blues, like every generation of immigrants had done with their suffering, turned it into art. The coda, the ending, returned to the simple opening melody. But now, enriched by everything that had come before, like a child coming home, changed but still himself. When the last note faded, there was applause from the doorway. Sister Maria had arrived, bringing Maya, Carlos, and Lily behind them, Mike the security guard, and two of Gabriel's regular customers who'd stopped when they heard the music. "Mijo," Sister Maria said, her voice thick with emotion. "That was... I don't have words." Maya ran up, hugging Ethan. "That's the most beautiful song I've ever heard." Carlos, usually trying to stay cool, wiped his eyes. "Bro, you're going to destroy them." Lily, the 7-year-old who rarely spoke, tugged on Ethan's sleeve. When he bent down, she whispered in his ear, "My mom used to play piano before she left me." Ethan's heart clenched. He knelt to her eye level. "Then you have music in your blood too, just like me. Maybe someday you'll play for me." Lily nodded, a small smile appearing. Sister Maria pulled Ethan aside. "You need to hear this. I got a call this morning from Rachel Chen, and Sterling's assistant. She called not officially. She called because she feels guilty. Victoria has hired a piano prodigy, Christopher Ashford, 14 years old, white, from a wealthy family to play after you, to prove the difference between real talent and what you have." Ethan's stomach dropped. Gabriel, having heard, gripped his hand. "It's a trap. She's rigging the deck from the start." "But that's not all," Sister Maria continued. "Rachel says she's been fired or quit. It's unclear, but she's still coming. She says Judge Patricia Howard has also arranged something. 3 professional musicians will be there, friends of hers. They'll listen with educated ears, not prejudiced ones." Mike, the security guard, stepped into the conversation. "I used to work for Sterling. She doesn't play fair, ever. But kid, you got something she doesn't." "What truth?" Mike tapped his chest. "Your music comes from here. Hers, it comes from ego." Friday night. Victoria Sterling's penthouse on the top floor of a luxury building overlooking the Charles River. The apartment was a minimalist masterpiece white, cold. Not a trace of Vicky Gonzalez anywhere, except for a small safe hidden in her closet. Victoria sat alone, an expensive bottle of wine in front of her but barely touched, in her hand. She held the safe's key. She hadn't opened it in 5 years. But tonight, with the gala only 24 hours away, something inside her had broken. The safe opened. Inside photographs she'd kept hidden. Young Vicky Gonzalez in Roxbury, her mother, Maria Gonzalez, in her cleaning uniform, her father, Jose, drunk and angry as always, and a photo of Vicky herself at age 12, the same age as Ethan, wearing thrift store clothes, but clutching a cheap keyboard her mother had bought from a pawn shop. Vicky Gonzalez wanted to be a pianist. Victoria whispered to the photo. But nobody listened to poor Mexican kids. Her phone buzzed. Jonathan Hartley. "Victoria, I just saw the RSVP numbers. We're going to have 400 guests. Media will be heavy. This is going to be the event of the season." "Excellent," she said mechanically. "You okay? You sound different." "I'm fine. Just preparing," after hanging up. Victoria poured a glass of wine, looked out the window at the city she'd conquered, the city Vicky Gonzalez never thought she could own. "The boy will fail," she said to her reflection. "He has to, because if he succeeds, it means Vicky Gonzalez could have succeeded. It means she didn't have to change her name, lighten her skin, erase every trace of herself. It means 30 years of denial were for nothing." She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she could hear it, her mother's voice. singing in Spanish while cleaning other people's houses. La música vive en tu corazón, mija. Nunca la pierdas. Music lives in your heart. My daughter, never lose it. But she had lost it. She'd buried it so deep, she'd forgotten it ever existed. The phone buzzed again. Rachel Chen. Even though she'd fired her, Victoria stared at the screen, then answered. Rachel, I thought I was clear, I know, but I need to say this. Rachel's voice was steady. For 5 years. I've worked for you. I've watched you do cruel things and rationalize them as business. But this is different, Rachel. I've watched videos of Ethan Rivera playing on the street. Miss Sterling. He's extraordinary, and you know it. That's why you're scared. I'm not scared of a child. No, you're scared of what he represents. There was a pause. I looked into you. Ms. Sterling. Your birth name. Your family. I know who you are. Victoria froze, and I understand why you did what you did. But destroying a child to prove to yourself that you were right to destroy yourself, that's not victory. Ms. Sterling, that's tragedy. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. My mother was an immigrant from Taiwan. She changed her name, worked 80 hours a week, never spoke Mandarin again, all so I could fit in. And you know what she died, unhappy, wealthy but hollow, because she spent her whole life pretending to be someone else. Victoria couldn't speak. Don't do the same thing to this boy, Rachel said softly. Give him the chance nobody ever gave Vicky Gonzalez. The line went dead. Victoria sat in silence. The photos spread before her. Young Vicky Gonzalez looked up from them with eyes full of hope that the woman Victoria Sterling had become had forgotten how to have. I'm sorry, Victoria whispered to the photo. I'm sorry I buried you. But even as she said those words, she knew she wouldn't cancel the gala. Couldn't. Too many people were watching. Too much money and reputation at stake. And maybe, a part deep inside her that she wouldn't admit, she needed to see, she needed to know if a child like Ethan, a child like Vicky once was, could actually succeed without erasing themselves. Tomorrow would tell. Saturday night. The Sterling Grand Ballroom sparkled like a jewel in the heart of Boston. Red carpet stretched before the entrance, where reporters had already lined up. Cameras flashing like falling stars. Guests began arriving at 6:30. 400 of Boston's elite CEOs, politicians, heirs, artists, and influencers, each dressed in outfits worth more than a year's rent. Judge Patricia Howard arrived in an African-inspired gowned gold parlor and kente cloth, a statement in a room full of European fashion. She walked with 3 people, an older man with a violin case, a middle-aged woman with a notepad, and a younger person with a video camera. Who are they? A reporter asked. My friends. Judge Howard smiled mysteriously. People who understand real music. Jonathan Hartley arrived with his trophy wife. She sparkled with diamonds, but empty behind the eyes. He waved to the cameras like he was a celebrity. Sandra Kellerman, in Chanel and pearls, stopped to pose for photos, posing with a model's hip. Boston's mayor arrived, political smile and handshakes. The Massachusetts senator, tech executives, old money and new money, all mingling in a sea of privilege. And then, causing a stir, Christopher Ashford and his parents. Christopher, 14 years old with perfect blonde hair and a young Armani tuxedo, walked with the confidence of someone who'd never been doubted. Christopher, reporters called. Are you ready to play tonight, always ready? He smiled, though I understand there will be a warm-up act before me. His father, William Ashford III, laughed. We told Christopher this is an educational opportunity. Witnessing the difference between proper training and, well, amateur efforts inside. The ballroom was the pinnacle of extravagance. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures of swans, champagne more expensive than most people's monthly rent. And at the center, on a raised stage like an altar, a Steinway Model D concert grand piano. 9 feet of gleaming black perfection. Victoria Sterling stood near the stage, wearing a white Valentino gown, her platinum blonde hair pulled up perfectly. But those who knew her well, very few people could see the tension around her eyes. The way she gripped her champagne too tightly. Rachel Chen was nearby despite being fired, sheltered by Judge Howard. She was recording everything on her personal phone. The ballroom is beautiful. A guest gasped. Event of the season? Another agreed. I can't wait to see this homeless boy. I've heard it's trending. Poor thing, really. Sterling should know better. Why she's giving him a chance. That's more than most people do. A chance to be humiliated on national TV. Some chance. Service entrance, 6:45 p.m. Gabriel's old Honda pulled up. Inside Gabriel driving, Sister Maria in the passenger seat. And in the back, Ethan, Maya, Carlos, and Lily. Ethan wore a suit from the thrift store that Gabriel had bought and tailored for 3 days. It wasn't perfect. There was a seam at the side. The cuffs were slightly long, but it was clean and pressed. The shoes, also from the thrift store, polished until they shined. But even in the suit, Ethan clearly didn't belong. His brown skin, his hair slightly too long, the way he sat uncomfortably in the clothes. Everything screamed outsider. You ready? Sister Maria asked gently. Ethan nodded, but his hands trembled. Maya squeezed his hand. You're going to be amazing, I know it. Carlos punched his shoulder. Show him, bro. Lily just hugged him. Security stopped them immediately as they approached the door. Service entrance is for staff only. He's a performer, Sister Maria said firmly. The guard, a large white man with an attitude, looked Ethan up and down and laughed. Sure he is. And I'm the president. Hey. A second guard, black, older, stepped in. I recognize him from the video. He's the kid. Let them through. Mike said we have orders. I said let them through. The first guard reluctantly stepped aside. As they passed, Gabriel whispered to the guard who'd helped them. Thank you, I know Sterling. The man replied quietly. She doesn't play fair. Make sure the kid knows what he's walking into. Backstage was a maze of hallways, cables, and rushing staff. Rachel Chen appeared from the shadows. You made it. Thank God. Who are you, Sister Maria asked. Rachel Chen. I used to work for Ms. Sterling. I came to help. She turned to Ethan. Listen, she's arranged for Christopher Ashford to play after you. He's a real prodigy Juilliard. Competitions. Everything. This isn't fair, I know. Ethan said quietly. My dad told me, I guess you're still going to play, I have to. Rachel studied this young face, saw the determination there. Okay, Judge Howard has people in the crowd, and I'm recording everything. Whatever happens, the truth will get out. They led Ethan backstage. Through a gap in the curtains, he could see the ballroom. More people than he'd ever seen in his life. Champagne and diamonds, lights and laughter. A world he'd never been welcomed into. And there, practicing scales on a piano beside the stage, Christopher Ashford. Even from here, Ethan could hear. He was good, really good. Perfect technique. Every note precise. Christopher's father, William, spotted Ethan staring. He walked over, looking Ethan up and down with barely concealed contempt. "You're the charity case," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. How quaint. Christopher looked up from the piano, studied Ethan. "Good luck. You'll need it." Not malicious, just a statement of fact. Christopher knew he was better, and everyone else knew it too. Ethan stayed silent, breathing, in his suit pocket that had belonged to someone else. Tailored to fit him, he could feel the photo. His mother at the piano, his grandfather at the cotton club, and now, folded inside it, the photo Gabriel had given him young Vicky Gonzalez, hopeful and whole before the world told her to change. "I'm not playing for them," Ethan whispered to himself. "I'm playing for all of us." 700 p.m. The ballroom filled to capacity, every seat taken, every camera ready. Victoria Sterling stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. The room hushed. She looked out at the sea of privileged faces, people like her, people who'd forgotten or never knew what it felt like to be hungry, cold, invisible. And for a flash, she saw herself. Not Victoria Sterling and Valentino, but Vicky Gonzalez in Salvation Army clothes, standing outside the Roxbury apartment building, wishing she could be seen. She shook her head, banishing the image. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice was perfect, not a trace of Vicky. "Thank you for your generosity tonight. Before our musical program, I want to introduce a special performer." She paused for effect, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Last week, I met a young man who believed he could play piano. I offered him an opportunity backstage." Ethan stood frozen. Sister Maria placed her hand on his shoulder. "Remember, mijo, you play for truth." Gabriel knelt down, looking his son in the eyes. "You play for your mother, for yourself, for everyone who's been told they don't belong. The children, Maya, Carlos." Lily hugged him. "You're our voice," Carlos whispered, on stage. Victoria continued. "If he can impress even one person here tonight, I will personally fund his adoption and education." Applause. They didn't know the cruelty of the setup. But first, let me be clear about what we're measuring him against. She introduced Christopher Ashford, listing his achievements: Juilliard pre-college, competition winner, medals. Judge Howard stood up. "Victoria, this is unconscionable. You're setting up a Victoria, cut her off." "Patricia, please, let's let merit speak for itself." The moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan Rivera. A spotlight found Ethan walking from backstage. 400 faces turned. Cameras flashed. The Steinway Model D waited on stage. 9 feet of judgment. This was it. Everything Ethan's entire life. His mother's hopes. His father's redemption. The children at the shelter's dreams. The question of whether a child like Vicky Gonzalez could matter all came down to this. One boy, one piano, and a song yet untold. Ethan stepped onto the stage. Every step across the polished ballroom floor felt like a mile. The chandelier lights too bright, the whispers of the audience like waves crashing against him. Camera flashes like lightning. Ethan Rivera, 11 years old, walked through a world never designed for him. He could hear the whispers, so small. "Poor thing. Is that suit from Goodwill? I give it 5 minutes before he runs off stage." But there were other voices too. Judge Howard, silent but nodding encouragement. Gabriel in the back, hands clenched, lips moving in silent prayer. Sister Maria, with the children crowded around her, all holding each other. And Rachel Chen, her phone up, recording every second. Ethan reached the piano. The Steinway Model D was more magnificent than anything he'd ever played. 9 feet of ebony perfection, keys like pearls, every surface reflecting the sparkling chandelier light. He sat on the bench, too low set up for a taller performer. Jonathan Hartley snickered in the front row. But Ethan didn't ask for help. He adjusted it himself, turning the adjustment crank until it was the right height. This simple act, not asking, just doing surprised some guests. The kid knew how to use a piano. Ethan placed his hands on the keys. They were cold, perfect, waiting. He closed his eyes, and in that darkness, the world fell away. The ballroom, the audience, Victoria Sterling with her cruel smile, all of it vanished. There was only his mother, Rosa, sitting beside him at their old upright piano. Music isn't about them. Mijo, her voice whispered in memory. It's about truth. Tell your truth. Baby, tell it loud. Well, Victoria's voice rang out, sharp as breaking glass. We're waiting, or have you forgotten how to play when it matters? Some guests laughed. Not many, but enough. Ethan opened his eyes, looked out at the audience. 400 faces, some curious, some contemptuous, some genuinely hoping he'd succeed, most just wanting entertainment. He found Gabriel. His father nodded once. He found Sister Maria and the children. Maya was already crying. He found Judge Howard, who stood as if ready to fight. And then, for a split second, his eyes met Victoria Sterling's, and he saw something in hers that made him stop breathing. Fear. She was afraid, not of him, but of herself. Ethan understood suddenly Victoria Sterling didn't want him to fail. She needed him to fail because if he succeeded, her entire life, her entire identity, everything she'd built, was based on a lie. Ethan placed his hands back on the keys and played. The first note came like a breath middle C, soft, uncertain, a child finding their voice. Then Ethan's right hand found the melody. La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, a Mexican folk song. His mother sang when he couldn't sleep. Simple, pure, sad in a way that made your heart ache. Some Latino guests in the ballroom recognized it immediately. An older brown-skinned man in the back row gripped his wife's hand. A woman in traditional shawl began crying softly. But Ethan didn't just play the melody straight. He filtered it through Debussy, through Chopin. Through every hour his mother taught him that music could be both rooted and borderless. His left hand joined a jazz bass line. Bill Evans meets Thelonious Monk, syncopated, unexpected, urban. The sound of Boston at night, of subway trains rumbling, of street corners where dreams went to die and be reborn. The ballroom fell completely silent. The professional musician Judge Howard had brought Dr. James Chen. Principal violinist with the Boston Symphony leaned forward in his seat. His mouth opened slightly. That's impossible. He whispered to his colleague. He's playing 3 independent lines simultaneously. Counterpoint, quartal harmony. That's doctorate-level technique. The music evolved. What had started simple became complex. Ethan's hands flew across the keys' octaves, arpeggios, lightning-fast runs that required spans an 11-year-old's hands shouldn't be able to make. But technique alone would just be exercise. What made the room hold its breath was the emotion. The music told a story. A mother teaching her son the only thing she could give music. Gentle melody, full of love illness creeping in, dissonance, minor keys, broken rhythm, death arriving, a single note held, then silence. A child alone in a world that didn't care, empty bass lines, repeating like footsteps on cold pavement, but then survival, resilience, a melody refusing to die. The theme returned, stronger, transformed by pain but not defeated by it. Tears streamed down faces in the audience, not just those who knew poverty, but those who'd never gone hungry, never been cold, never lost. The music found what was human in them and pulled it out. Victoria Sterling stood frozen at the side of the stage, champagne glass trembling in her hand. The melody of La Llorona touched something deep inside her. She remembered her mother, Maria, singing that song while cleaning other people's houses. Remembered feeling young and invisible and full of hope that music could save her. No. She shook her head hard. He can't do this. He can't break me. But Ethan wasn't trying to break anyone. He was just telling the truth. The music reached its development, the section where all themes collided and fought and finally found harmony. Ethan's fingers moved so fast they blurred. His left hand thundered with octaves. His right hand soared with a melody flying above like a soul escaping. Christopher Ashford. The 14-year-old prodigy meant to prove his superiority, sat in the wings with his face pale. His father, William, muttered something about impossible and must be trickery. But there was no trickery. Just a child telling his story, and in doing so, telling the story of everyone who'd ever been told they weren't enough. The music reached its climax, a moment of pure triumph where every note, every theme, every emotion converged into a single powerful chord of undeniable hope. Then, like all the best stories, it began to resolve, but the music quieted, but it wasn't a happy ending. It was exhaustion, the kind that comes after fighting for your life and winning, but knowing you have to fight again tomorrow. The final melody, La Llorona. Simple once more played softly by the right hand, while the left hand held a single, vibrating chord. A question without an answer. What happens to children like Ethan? What happens to talent born in the wrong zip code? What happens to dreams when the world decides you're not worthy? The last note rang out, held, then faded to silence. Ethan kept his hands on the keys, head bowed, breathing hard like he'd run a marathon. Silence. 1 second, 2, 3, 5, 10. The ballroom held its collective breath. Then, Judge Patricia Howard stood up, clapping. Slow, deliberate, each clap echoing in the silence like gunshots. Gabriel in the back joined, tears flowing freely. The professional musicians Judge had brought stood, applauding, then like a dam breaking. The entire room exploded, standing ovation. 400 people on their feet. Applause not just polite but thunderous. Cameras flashing like falling stars. People shouting, cheering. But not everyone. Jonathan Hartley remained seated, face red with anger. William Ashford, Christopher's father, stared with disbelieving anger. Sandra Kellerman applauded because she knew she had to, but her eyes were cold, and Victoria Sterling stood frozen at the side of the stage, face unreadable. Ethan stood from the piano bench, walked to the edge of the stage. The chandelier lights blinded him, but he could see them, all of them, the people who told him He didn't belong. He found Victoria, looked straight into her eyes, and spoke into the microphone. Mrs. Sterling, you asked if I could play something worth listening to. That piece was called Racist Roots. His voice steady, clearer than it had ever been in his life. It's about my mother, Rosa Rivera. She died because we couldn't afford her cancer treatment. It's about my father, who left us but came back. It's about every kid at Hope Haven Shelter who goes to bed hungry but wakes up hopeful. Pause. But it's also about you. Gasps from the audience. Victoria went pale. Gabriel Cruz told me about Vicky Gonzalez from Roxbury. The ballroom erupted with whispers. Victoria stepped back as if struck. He showed me the picture. You were one of us. Mexican-American. Poor, struggling. Cameras swiveled to catch Victoria's reaction. You didn't just change your name. You erased yourself. You hate me because I remind you of who you used to be. But here's what I learned. You can't erase your roots. They make you who you are. The music I just played, it's only beautiful because it honors where it came from. Victoria tried to speak. Couldn't. Judge Howard. Is this true? Victoria media went wild. Cameras everywhere. Ethan continued, his voice softer now. Not accusing, but understanding. You hate me because I remind you of who you used to be. But here's what I learned. You can't erase your roots. They make you who you are. The music I just played, it's only beautiful because it honors where it came from. Mexican folk, jazz, classical all together, not fighting, just being. He stepped closer to Victoria, the crowd silent, waiting. You don't have to be cruel to prove you're not weak. Ethan's words hung in the air. The entire ballroom held its breath. Victoria Sterling or Vicky Gonzalez stood under the sparkling chandelier lights of the ballroom she owned, stripped bare before 400 people and live cameras. The walls she'd built for 30 years, cracking around her. Victoria tried to run, turned away from the stage. From Ethan? From the truth? But Ethan spoke into the mic. Gently, my mother used to say, those who don't know their history are condemned to repeat it. Victoria stopped, her back still turned to the audience. You don't have to be cruel to prove you've overcome. You can just be both. Slowly, Victoria turned back, walked to the microphone on stage. Everyone held their breath. The lights caught every detail, mascara beginning to run, hands trembling. The way she stood like every year was finally catching up to her at once. My name is... Her voice broke. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, tried again. My name is Victoria Sterling. Pause. But I was born Vicky Gonzalez. The ballroom exploded, cameras flashed like thunder, reporters shouted, but Victoria held up a hand. And somehow, the room quieted again. I grew up in Roxbury. My father was a drunk. My mother died cleaning houses for people like you. She pointed at the audience, and some guests flinched. I clawed my way out. I told myself I would never be powerless again. I changed everything. My name, my skin, my voice, my memories. Tears flowed freely now. But this boy... God, this boy... She looked at Ethan. You're right. I hate you because you remind me I'm still that scared little girl from Roxbury. Her voice broke completely. And I hate myself for what I became. Ethan walked to her, an 11-year-old child approaching a billionaire who'd tried to destroy him, the entire world watching through live cameras. He held out his hand. You don't have to hate either of us. You can just be both. Be Victoria Sterling and Vicky Gonzalez. Victoria looked at his hand. the small brown hand, calloused from playing on cheap keyboards in the cold. The hand that, 30 years ago, could have been hers. She took it. They stood together under the lights, the billionaire and the homeless child, the woman who'd run from her past and the boy living it. Media went crazy. Some audience members cried. Others applauded. Some stood in shocked silence. Judge Howard stepped onto the stage, her voice carrying the authority of a federal judge. Victoria Sterling or Vicky Gonzalez, you made a promise. Before all of us, before the media, you said if Ethan impressed even one person, you'd fund his adoption and education. She pointed at the standing audience. Still applauding. I think he impressed everyone. So what's it going to be? Victoria looked down at her hand, still holding Ethan's, looked into this young face that looked back with eyes holding more understanding than any 11-year-old should have. I'll honor my word. But before anyone could applaud, she held up a hand. But more than that, she looked out at the audience, found Gabriel in the back. Gabriel Cruz. I see you there. Gabriel stepped forward, afraid. You said Ethan needs adoption. He already has a father. Gabriel's eyes widened, tears starting. I'll fund family reunification, apartment, therapy, whatever you need. Gracias, Gabriel cried. Thank you, gracias, but Victoria wasn't done, Judge Howard. I need legal counsel. Judge nodded, curious. I want to establish a real foundation. Not for PR, for kids like Ethan. She took a deep breath. The Vicky Gonzalez Foundation. Gasps from the crowd. Using my real name, Ethan said softly. I don't need your charity. The ballroom quieted, waiting. But the other kids do. All of them. He pointed to Sister Maria. Maya, Carlos, Lily in the back. They deserve chances. Real ones, Judge Howard said. I'll make sure it happens. Then, turning to the crowd, and I challenge everyone in this room to do the same. One person stood the conductor of the Boston Symphony. Full scholarships for any shelter kid who wants to learn music. A tech CEO coding programs for homeless youth. Starting next month, a wealthy family will fund legal aid for family reunifications. Offers kept coming, each building on the last. Christopher Ashford, the 14-year-old prodigy, stepped from the wings. He looked at Ethan, no longer with contempt, but with something else, respect. Maybe wonder. I still want to play, Christopher said. But not to compete, to learn. Can you teach me to do that play like that? Ethan looked at this prodigy, who was supposed to make him feel small. I can teach you technique. But the rest, you have to live it. Christopher thought about it, then nodded. Maybe we could play together? Classical meets, whatever you call that. Jazz meets soul meets truth. Ethan smiled. Yeah, I'd like that. And Victoria watched all this unfold, still holding the microphone. Finally, she spoke. I spent 30 years trying to become who I thought the world wanted me to be, and it made me successful, wealthy, powerful. She looked down at her hands that had signed billion-dollar deals, destroyed competitors, built an empire, but it also made me hollow. She looked at Ethan. This 11-year-old child just reminded me that you don't have to choose between where you come from and where you're going. You can be both. She turned to the cameras. My name is Victoria Sterling, and I'm Vicky Gonzalez. And for the first time in 30 years, I'm not ashamed of either one. The ballroom erupted, not with the polite applause of a charity gala, but with the roaring standing ovation of people who'd witnessed something real: transformation, redemption, truth spoken with power. Ethan, Gabriel, Sister Maria, and the children huddled together at the side of the stage. Victoria stood a bit apart, watching them, a family made not from blood but from survival, from music, from the refusal to break. Judge Howard approached Victoria, placed a hand on her shoulder. That was brave. What you just did. Or foolish, Victoria said weakly. No, brave. Foolish is spending 30 more years running from yourself. Victoria looked at the judge. This black woman who'd fought her own battles to be seen, heard, respected. How did you do it? Succeed without losing yourself? Judge Howard smiled sadly. Who said I didn't lose myself along the way I did? Many times. But luckily, I had people to remind me to come back. Like Ethan just did for you. Cameras still flashing, reporters still shouting questions. The media would feast on this for weeks. But in this moment, in this ballroom, an 11-year-old boy with nothing but talent and courage had changed everything. Not just for himself, for a billionaire who'd forgotten who she was, for a father seeking redemption, for homeless children watching, realizing for the first time that maybe, just maybe, they mattered. And for everyone who'd been told they had to choose between where they came from and where they wanted to go, that they could. In fact, be both. Music had done it. One song, one truth, one boy unafraid to let his roots show. The ballroom still vibrated with the energy of what had just happened. Media crowded to interview. Guests surrounded Ethan, Victoria, Gabriel, but Sister Maria, with the protective instinct of someone who'd cared for vulnerable children for years, pushed through the crowd. Enough, she said firmly. He's a child. He needs space. Judge Howard assisted, using her federal court authority. You'll have your statements, but not now. Victoria, still trembling from her public unmasking, stepped forward. For the first time in years, her voice carried a hint of the Spanish accent she'd worked so hard to erase. Judge Howard is right. But I need to say something. She turned to Gabriel, who stood with his arm protectively around Ethan. Gabriel Cruz. We grew up together. I remember when you played saxophone on Roxbury Street corners, trying to earn enough for new reeds. Gabriel nodded, eyes wet. And I remember when Vicky Gonzalez promised me someday she'd leave the neighborhood and never come back. I kept that promise. Victoria whispered, but it cost me everything. She turned to the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces, some sympathetic, some curious, some judgmental. I said I'd honor my word, and I will, but not the way I originally intended. She took a deep breath. Ethan is right. He doesn't need my charity. He has a father. Gabriel, if you're willing and if Ethan wants, I'll fund complete family reunification. Not a program, not supervision, just family. Gabriel couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears flowing. Victoria continued. An apartment in Jamaica Plain. Good neighborhood. Safe. Near good schools. 3 bedrooms, 1 for Ethan, 1 for Gabriel, and 1 for music. Paid in full for 5 years. The crowd gasped. Full tuition at any school Ethan chooses. If he wants Boston Conservatory, it's his. If he wants public school, it's his choice. Ethan looked at her, eyes wide. And therapy for both of you. Because reuniting after trauma isn't easy, I want you to have support. Gabriel stepped forward, his voice cracking. Why are you doing this? Victoria looked at him. Then Ethan, then out at the audience, because 30 years ago, nobody gave Vicky Gonzalez a chance like this. Nobody told her she could keep her name, keep her voice, keep herself, and still succeed. So she thought she had to choose. Her voice broke. I chose wrong. I chose power over purpose, wealth over roots, and it made me hollow. She looked straight into the camera. But maybe it's not too late. Not for me. But for kids like Ethan, for every Vicky Gonzalez out there being told they have to change to matter. Judge Howard stepped forward. Victoria, I'm going to hold you accountable to those words. The Vicky Gonzalez Foundation, it will be real, not PR. Real, I know. Victoria nodded. And I want you on the board to make sure I don't go back to my old ways. She turned to Rachel Chen, who was still recording from the shadows. Rachel, I fired you. That was my fault. I want you back not as my assistant, as executive director of the new foundation. If you'll have me. Rachel lowered her phone. Stunned. Ms. Sterling Vicky, Victoria corrected softly. You can call me Vicky. 1 month after that night, everything had changed. Gabriel and Ethan moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in Jamaica Plain, flooded with sunlight. It wasn't much, they didn't have much, but it was theirs. Ethan's bedroom had a real bed for the first time in 2 years. A desk, posters of jazz legends on the wall, Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, and a large framed photo of Rosa Rivera at her piano that Gabriel had enlarged from an old picture. The 3rd bedroom became their music room, with the Bosendorfer Imperial Grand that Gabriel had restored. Victoria had bought it from Gabriel for twice its value, then immediately gifted it to Ethan. Not charity, she'd said. An investment in the future, every evening. Gabriel and Ethan sat at that piano together, playing duets. It was awkward at first. They were still learning how to be father and son, but the music filled the gaps that words couldn't. Meanwhile, Victoria Sterling, or Vicky Gonzalez Sterling, as she now introduced herself, had moved from her corner office at Sterling Enterprises to a smaller space dedicated to the Vicky Gonzalez Foundation. The walls that once held awards and photos with politicians now displayed old photographs from Roxbury. She didn't hide them anymore. Rachel Chen, now CEO of the foundation, presented the numbers one afternoon. 300 kids across Boston now have access to instruments and lessons. 10 families have been reunited. And Hope Haven Shelter has a brand new building. Victoria smiled a real smile. Not the practiced one she'd perfected over decades. What did we name it? The Rosa Rivera Hope Center. Rachel answered. After Ethan's mother. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Good. That's good. But it's not enough. It will never be enough. At the Rosa Rivera Hope Center, Sister Maria stood in the new building, twice the size of the old one, with room for 100 people to live with dignity. A dedicated music room had been built where children could learn. Maya, now 9 years old, held her very own violin, not borrowed, but hers, and practiced Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with fierce concentration. Carlos, 13, sat at a laptop that was part of the new coding program, his eyes bright as he learned to program. And Lily, the 7-year-old who had rarely spoken, now sang in a small choir, her voice growing stronger each day, Ethan inspired all of them. Sister Maria told reporters who came to document the transformation. He showed them they matter. Even Victoria's personal life had changed. Her penthouse, once cold and white and sterile, now had color a Mexican serape draped over the sofa, paintings by Latino artists on the walls, and on her coffee table sat a framed photograph of young Vicky Gonzalez, no longer hidden in a safe. One evening, her phone rang with a number she hadn't seen in 15 years. Her mother, Maria Gonzalez. Victoria stared at the screen, hand trembling, then answered. "Mama," she said, and Spanish flowed more naturally than it had in decades. "Sí, soy yo. Vicky." Gabriel's music shop became busier than ever. The publicity from the gala had brought customers. But more importantly, Gabriel was now teaching children from shelters, from poor neighborhoods, anyone who wanted to learn. Mike, the security guard who'd become a friend, stopped by most days. "You're doing good." "Man," Mike said one afternoon, "Rosa would be proud." Gabriel smiled through tears. "I hope so. God, I hope so." 6 months after that transformative night, Boston Symphony Hall hosted a special event. The banner outside read, "Boston Pops presents Races, an Evening of Hope." The hall was packed. But this time, it wasn't just the wealthy. Tickets had been given free to families from shelters and poor neighborhoods. The audience was a true cross-section of Boston privilege and poverty sitting side by side. Ethan, now 12 years old and a bit taller, sat at the concert grand piano on stage. Behind him, the entire Boston Pops orchestra waited for the conductor's signal. In the front row sat Gabriel, Sister Maria, and the children from Rosa Rivera Hope Center. Judge Howard was there with her musician friends. Christopher Ashford sat with his family. His violin in hand, he would join Ethan for an encore later. Rachel Chen attended with the entire Vicky Gonzalez Foundation team. And Victoria Sterling sat not in the front row, but toward the back, where she'd asked to be seated. Humbler now than she'd ever been. The conductor raised his baton, and Ethan began to play. This version of Races was different, arranged for full symphony orchestra. The Mexican folk melody that had begun as a simple tune on a cheap keyboard now soared through violins and cellos. The jazz passages were lifted by trumpets and saxophones. The classical structure was enriched by the full power of the orchestra. But at its heart, Ethan's piano told the same story it had always told. A story about loss and survival, about roots that don't trap you, but ground you, about finding your way home to who you really are. When the final note rang out, the hall erupted in applause that lasted 5 full minutes. Everyone was on their feet. Ethan stood and turned to face the audience, but instead of bowing, he spoke into the microphone. "This isn't about me." His voice echoed through the hall. "This is about everyone who's been told they're not enough. Every kid who goes to bed wondering if tomorrow will be better. Every parent fighting to provide. Every immigrant told they have to give up themselves to belong." He paused, finding Victoria in the crowd. And this is about everyone who forgot who they were and found their way back. Victoria stood, applauding through tears, no longer ashamed to be seen crying after the performance as the audience filed out. Dozens of people approached Ethan with stories of their own. An older woman told him her parents had immigrated from Poland and changed their names to sound more American. A young man shared how he'd hidden his accent for years, until he realized it was part of his strength. A mother with 2 children thanked him for giving her kids hope. The music had done more than entertain. It had opened hearts. It had started conversations. It had reminded people that their stories mattered. My mother used to say that music is proof that beauty can come from pain. She was right about that. But she also taught me something else. Something I want to share with you now, she used to say. Never forget where you come from. Not as a burden, but as a gift. Your roots don't trap you. They ground you. They give you the strength to grow, to reach higher, to become who you're meant to be. You don't have to erase yourself to succeed. You don't have to choose between who you are and who you want to become. You can be both. 6 months after that night at the gala, my life looked completely different. I had a home, a father, a future full of possibilities. But more importantly, I learned that my story wasn't just mine. It belongs to all of us, everyone who's been told they have to hide their truth, change their name, speak differently, be someone else to matter. You don't. You matter exactly as you are. At the Rosa Rivera Hope Center, Maya practices her violin every day, dreaming of playing in an orchestra someday. Carlos is learning to code and talks about creating apps that help homeless families find resources. Lily, who barely spoke when I met her, now sings in the choir and helps welcome new kids to the center, telling them, "You're safe here. You're home." Victoria, who once ran from her past, now embraces it. She visits Roxbury regularly, the neighborhood she once couldn't wait to escape. She speaks Spanish with her mother again. She's teaching piano to kids at the community center where she once learned to play. She's not trying to save them, she's learning from them. Remembering who Vicky Gonzalez was and integrating that girl with the woman Victoria Sterling became. My father, Gabriel, teaches music 6 days a week now. He says every child who learns to play, every young person who discovers their voice through music, is a small redemption for the years he lost, the time he can never get back. But instead of drowning in regret, he's creating something new, something good. And me, I still play every day. Sometimes at the conservatory where I'm now enrolled. Sometimes on street corners, because I never want to forget where I came from. Sometimes at the Rosa Rivera Hope Center, where kids gather around the piano and we make music together, not perfectly, but joyfully, truthfully, because that's what music is really about. Not perfection. Truth. Dear friends, talent isn't rare. Opportunity is. Somewhere right now. There's a child who could change the world, who has gifts the rest of us need to see and hear. They just need someone to believe in them, not pity them, not save them, but see them, truly see them, and give them a real chance. Every child deserves to discover their gift. Every voice deserves to be heard. Every person deserves the opportunity to find their way home to the roots that make them who they are, the culture that shaped them, the history that grounds them. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own journey or someone you know who's fighting to be seen, please share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their roots are their strength, not their shame, that their accent is beautiful, that their name matters, that they don't have to become someone else to succeed. Together, we can make sure no child's talent is wasted because of circumstance, no voice is silenced because of poverty, no dream is abandoned because Society says certain people don't belong. Gracias. Thank you. Cam on, however you say it. In whatever language feels like home to you, thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for believing that every story matters, including yours. Remember, your story matters. Your voice matters. Your roots are not your chains, they are your wings. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to choose between where you come from and where you're going. You can be both. You should be both. The world needs you to be both. This is Ethan Rivera, reminding you that the most beautiful music comes from being exactly who you are.